Hello, and welcome back to another edition of Scale Up Radio, the podcast inspired by the Entrepreneurial Scale Up system and designed to make navigating our scale up journeys that little bit easier by learning from each other's experiences. It's me, Granger Forson again, and on this episode of the show, I'm joined by Jason Simeon of Gabriel Engineering Group. Today, we'll uncover how Jason strategically acquired businesses to form a thriving engineering group, his insights on leadership during the transition, and his ambitious goals for the future. It's a masterclass in building trust, fostering resilience, and scaling up by acquisition with purpose. To ensure you don't miss any inspirational future episodes, do subscribe to Scale Up Radio wherever you listen to your podcasts. Also, you can nominate a guest for Scale Up Radio. If you know someone with an interesting scale-up journey, you can find out how in the show notes. So, let's now dive into the fabulous journey of strategy, leadership, and ambition with Jason Simeon. Hello, Jason Simeon. Welcome to Scale Up Radio. Please introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi, Granger. Yep, thank you for asking me along. I'm Jason Simeon. I run a group of companies called Gabriel Engineering Group. But I started life as a bit of an airplane geek in the early days, and through that journey, I've probably been laughed at a number of times where people have told me I couldn't do things, and through sheer dogged determination, have kind of said, "Well, I'll show you," and eventually I've ended up through trials and tribulations in a place that I feel I was meant to end up in terms of being a CEO for a group of businesses. My business is called Gabriel Engineering Group, and it's made up of 3 organizations. So one of those is called ECEX Limited, very much in the mechanical electrical engineering space. Cotswold Steel, which is in the metal fabrication space for heavy metals, framings, etc. And then Bailey Fabrications, that does secondary metalworks and architectural steel metalworks for the construction industry, manufacturing, and we're looking to move into renewables and ports. Turned over in 2023 8.6 million as a collective group annually, which was up from 8.2 the previous year. So showing some growth and moving in the right direction.
Wow, brilliant! Well, that's fantastic. I like airplane geek. That ended up where you feel that you've meant to be, and built a business, a set of businesses as well. Yeah, let's just explore that a bit. Have you individually created those, or did you purchase them and bring them in part of the group? You know, which one came first, and what's happened around those?
Sure. So they were all done through management buy-in, and actually I was a C-suite executive for electronics manufacturing business in the UK for about 20 years. That resulted in costing me lots of time, lots of travel, lots of energy being used for someone else. I always wanted to be my own person. I've started several businesses, failed at those. And the adage of the master is not made until you've made enough failures probably comes true into this space. So for me, the wake up moment on where I actually then started to kind of look at buying my first business was when I was looking at myself in the mirror after my wife had decided that she would have an affair and a divorce was on the cards. So I was just a part-time dad at that stage, kind of full-time work during the week, 80 hours plus a week, traveling all over the place, come over at the weekend, try and spend time with the kids. And it probably wasn't sustainable over that period of time. So unfortunately, that pain then caused me to have a little bit of a look in the mirror and say, is this really what you want for life? And the answer was no. It was quite a brutal no as well, a very painful no from my side. And that then led me to say, okay, right, well, what's the change you're going to make? And actually, I decided financially I couldn't just switch over to something new. I had commitments. I had all of these areas to look at in life. So I started to explore through Jeremy Harbour Club, actually, who runs a club around how to buy distressed businesses. Did a course through him. And I went off and started my first venture into management buy-in, which didn't end very well, actually. And luckily for me, I followed some of the methodologies that Jeremy talked about in terms of protecting myself through an SPV. So I used an SPV as a buying vehicle to kind of move into this distressed organization. I did that with 2 other people as a partnership, probably another mistake that I made at that stage. So it's good to learn all of these mistakes early on so you can kind of get them out of the way and then move on. And the third mistake I made when I went into that was around working with someone who really wasn't interested in making the organization survive. What that person was really looking for was a scapegoat that they could push all the blame to and then walk away with the money that they had made over those years. So unfortunately, we had to wrap that business up and use the SPV as the way of actually kind of putting that into administration and protecting me and the 2 partners. And a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of kind of, am I doing the right thing? Was this just all a mistake? All these people that had told me I couldn't do it in the past, were they right? Self-confidence issues, etc. So I kind of went through all of that anxiety and stress, and then worked out that maybe distressed businesses wasn't for me. Maybe if I went after a healthy business, that might be a better area for me and where I fit and where I'd be able to apply the 20 years of experience as a C-suite executive into running an organization. But one without all of the politics or all of the pretending and kind of wearing a suit, etc. And something I understood a lot better. So that led me to reaching out to a number of brokers and looking at kind of what was for sale. And then second kind of challenge was, well, where am I getting the money in order to buy into these businesses? So I had to kind of work out, okay, well, where do I get funding from? How does all of that process work? So I was able to reach out to a number of organizations that were involved in kind of setting up funding for people buying for businesses for SMEs in particular. So this 1 million to sort of 10 million marker place where the banks aren't really interested in, but in terms of commercial banks anyway, there are other banks that are interested in things like invoice financing, asset financing, debt servicing, my own money, and kind of personal guarantees, and all of these good kind of contract terms that kind of tie you up to the point where you almost feel scared to sign a bit of paper that says, right, actually, I'm about to give everything away on a, and that bet is myself and this business and the hope that it will work. So that first business I actually bought was Cotswold Steel. I bought that business for 1.7 million with a deferred interest element and all of the kind of combination that I talked about before. And what I ended up doing, and it sounds funny to say it now, but the divorce put me in a position where I was fortunate enough to have some equity that I basically sold. So we sold the family home. I moved into a new home, and from that side, that was all mine. I could kind of choose to do what I wanted to do with that. So I took a risk on me, and I sold the house. So I put my own money into the first business. So high risk from that side, but actually I'd run the numbers, I'd done the calculations. I figured that I knew how to run a business. This was simpler in terms of what I was used to before in terms of electronics, and I understood the what needed to change in order to make this a more effective business. Thankfully for me, that worked out, and that was about 5 years ago. So I did that about 5 years ago, and from that side of things, the person that I bought the business from, Dave, him and I are still very good friends. And actually, one of the learnings that I had in terms of buying a business is you need to buy a business of someone that is willing to sell and is also willing to kind of put up a little bit of risk at their end in terms of that relationship and trust in you to be able to kind of deliver their legacy and protect their organization going forward. And I think for me, whenever I've gone into buying a business, the people are at the center of all of the things that I'm kind of discussing. So I'm about kind of protecting those individuals as a result of kind of working through the transition process. And that transition process, probably that 12 to 18 months, is a very critical time in a management buy-in journey. And that's where you're really trying to understand one cycle of an annual kind of organization operating. So you need to be able to reach back out to the person that you bought the business from. There needs to be some sort of transition period where they're sitting in the seat and you have to work alongside that individual to kind of work out how that organization works while it goes through one turn of the handle in terms of its annual review. Because like any business, things pop up that you might not have picked up in the legal due diligence or the financial due diligence, or contracts that have peculiar activities that go on that nobody really writes down, but actually it's in the head of the old owner.
Yeah.
So being able to reach into the head of the old owner and have that conversation with him was essential as we did that transition period. I then, in my head, had a group structure always in mind, and I talked about buying 6 businesses. If you ask me where the number 6 comes from, I have no idea where the number 6 comes from.
Right.
However, it was just a number for a number's sake. I think what I was really looking to do was build a group of businesses.
Okay.
So I then went off to the second business, which is ECX Limited, in a similar area of a bigger scale. So Cotswold Steel was turning over about £1 million a year. In fact, just under £1 million a year. We've taken it up to 1.2, and we're still then looking to grow that business as we move forward. ECX was doing just over £3 million a year turnover, and rather than one owner, there were 3 owners involved in that particular business, which presented slightly different challenges in that it wasn't just one person I was trying to convince I could manage and take their business to the next level. It was 3 people I was having to convince to do that. And on top of that, we then had this fantastic thing called COVID that appeared. So we had to do a lot of these things that you would normally do in person, where you would develop a relationship, you would go out for dinner, you would do all of that kind of activity to create the trust early on, online in a strange world where everybody was worried about getting COVID. So that presented its own challenges. And about the time we were about to sign the deal, the lockdown restrictions were being reduced, so you were able to travel for business purposes, and I found myself in a hotel under kind of strict quarantine conditions, where for dinner, etc., you were given a kind of paper bag of food that was pre-prepared. You were given a time slot where you had to go and collect that paper bag and had to strictly take it back to your room. You had to wear masks wherever you were indoors. And in fact, the only other people that were in that hotel were news agents, or people kind of looking to do interviews with various different organizations, etc., around bits and pieces that were going on. So it was a very strange environment to walk into. I then found myself walking into a meeting room where we all had to be kind of spaced out, which obviously, again, you couldn't shake hands, you didn't have any physical contact. So creating trust was a real problem at that stage.
Yeah.
And that was the first time we actually met in person. So we then obviously had to kind of move past this digital persona bit to then kind of work out, okay, right, do we have a level of trust where we're all prepared to sign the documents and say we'll do this deal? And effectively, I found myself pitching the business again. So I had a very difficult meeting with those 3 gents, and working out what and how that would kind of work going forward. Looking at the deferred consideration, the payments, providing assurances, and answering all the questions you'd expect a good business professional who'd been running a business for 30 years to ask you as the new person on the block, in order to protect their interests, both from a financial point of view, where they're buying out of their business in day one consideration, but for a 2-year deferred aspect of that, and how I would then kind of ensure that they would then get paid during that period, as well as me doing debt servicing.
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm pleased to say, actually, at the end of April there, that 2-year period was up. No dramas in terms of kind of doing all of that, and our debt servicing has kind of been satisfied from that side of things. So actually, that deal is done, locked away, and is probably a success for me, albeit a difficult starting kind of environment.
Yes.
And I probably followed a similar model in terms of running that business as I did to Cotswolds, in terms of getting it to that stage. Where things started to change, and Gabriel Engineering Group was acting as the kind of holding co at that point, is when I then bought the 3rd business. And the 3rd business kind of came to me rather than me going to the market and talking to the brokers. So I was approached by a broker via LinkedIn. similar types of businesses, similar type of turnover to ECX and Cotswolds, and similar size. And the owner was looking to kind of again protect their legacy, but they were struggling to find a buyer with experience in that industry, running businesses of that type. So they approached me, and I went and had a chat with my finance team, my legal team, and my management team at that point, to then sort of work out, is this a deal we want to do? Will this from a scaling up and a growing our business be the right thing to do in terms of the general kind of growth plan versus a step change to growth that we hadn't considered when we were looking at our original business strategy?
Yeah.
And the answer for that was kind of varying. I then had some kind of sleepless nights, had to then chat to my wife about what level of support she was prepared to kind of go down. Was I prepared for the challenge? And thankfully, my wife, now wife, is very supportive of me running my businesses, because we kind of were quite clear about what are the boundaries for me doing business in my own regards. Things like more time with the kids, more time with her, and getting that balance back between running my business and then actually kind of doing the things that I said I would do with my family. So this would probably put us under pressure for a period of time in terms of sort of the level of work required in order to get a business deal over the table. And she'd experienced that through the previous two, but obviously the first one was a scale that wasn't as big as the second one. And now I was in uncharted territory here, where I was about to take a third business on and then move to then incorporating that into a group structure.
Yeah.
So there's a lot more work required when you're kind of then moving things from sort of just three separate entities into how do you take advantage from a tax point of view in terms of kind of maintaining a legal trading environment versus when do you then pull everything together into a group structure to make all of that work effectively.
Yeah.
So we did the deal, and that was July last year, and that's where we took the business from sort of about 4.8 million kind of in terms of trading turnover to sort of that 8 million mark. Overnight, as a result of sort of bringing that business into the group. So we were able to kind of take the turnover for that and then kind of show that in our P&L, our balance sheet at a group level as a growth multiplier as a result of us kind of taking that business on. We're currently in that transition process of that 12 to 18 month period. What I hadn't factored in was the emotional stress, I think, of trying to get that funding over the line as a result of kind of doing things like cross-company guarantees and leveraging the other business areas. Some of the business had debt at the moment. The level of conversations we'd be having with the debt servicing businesses and companies around what securities they would want.
Yeah.
And where they fitted in the kind of ranking of securities, etc., and how all of that worked. So the workload and level didn't just kind of double; it sort of trebled and kind of went up to kind of 5/5 of whatever we did on the first deal overnight. And that level of stress actually, when I signed the deal and we completed the deal and everything was all done and the lawyer said that's it, all done. I was actually away on a team day, ironically, with my ECX business, celebrating some kind of recent kind of deals, etc., and doing all of that. So whilst we were doing that, I'd kind of signed this deal in the background, and then phoned my wife, and all of this emotional outpouring of all of that stress over the last sort of 6 months came out, and I blubbed to my wife on the phone. And she was like, "You're supposed to be happy." And I went, "I am happy. That's why I'm crying, because the stress of all of that has just come all at once and released itself."
Wow. What a journey. What a journey. the last 5 years, taking that initial idea of time to work for yourself and learning from everything you've gone through that. I just want to explore a few of those elements. What you talked about a group, you wanted six companies, but is that six? Why a group of companies? Why did you set out to create a group?
I think from my point, creating the group actually is the kind of cliche around the sum of all parts is stronger than just one part. And if I take kind of current trading positions around things like interest rates, Brexit, what's happening in terms of kind of contract margins, etc., construction has been really squeezed, and you kind of read in the news about a lot of construction businesses going out of business as a result of being squeezed but from their margins and haven't factored in these additional things like interest rates. So when the contracts were originally set, they were probably set at a fixed price. Then they've had to absorb all of these additional costs, which then have made them kind of inefficient and kind of started to lose money.
Yeah.
And they're then unable to borrow, and they're building up debt, etc. So that then causes them to crash. So the market conditions are really difficult at the moment, and particularly in construction, kind of Q4, Q1 is also a difficult trading period. So knowing that my businesses kind of support the construction industry, we support engineering businesses, and we had to kind of factor that into my plans, and I sort of said, okay, right, well, how do I protect these organizations and the legacy and the people within that to then actually ensure that we're a sustainable long-term business. And actually the way I worked out that we could do that to the best was then actually to kind of sort of say, okay, right, well, actually, if we then trade off cash flow as cash is king kind of thing from this type of thing, is saying, right, how do we build up a cash reserve? If things are short 1 month in one business, can we then trade that across the entities to then actually manage that and actually prop one business up whilst we then are kind of dealing with a problem part of the organization. So that was the reason for really moving to this group structure, was to say, okay, right, well, I can protect parts of the business by using other parts of the business that are doing better, and then actually kind of allow that organization to probably, if it was just by itself, might have actually folded, and we might have had the administrators in. So in order to protect that, given all of the bet that I'd made on myself early on, and it's all of my money that I put into this, along with kind of convincing others to kind of bet on me, to de-risk all of that, the group seemed like the most sensible way to de-risk it all.
Yeah, no, very, very logical, and I can really see that now and that understanding of it. And I presume the different businesses are not all just in construction; they're in different types of industries as well. Then are they?
They are, yeah. So we've kind of not just in terms of order intake, customer kind of market areas, etc. We spread that right across a number of different areas, again, to protect the portfolio of different kind of contract types. So there are synergies in terms of kind of working practices and ways of working, or materials, but in terms of kind of markets they're serving or what they're doing, or kind of particular industries, etc., they're different.
Okay, so that's the structure of the businesses. Now you've got the group structure, and then you've got the three businesses. How do they work in terms of boards and leadership roles?
Yeah, so in terms of the boards, etc. So you have myself for this as CEO. And then I have a group finance director and a group managing director. So between us, the three of us, we're the board. And then at each one of those legal entities, we have a general manager, so the person that's responsible for the trading kind of operationally at each one of those businesses areas. And that's our management structure. And from that side, myself, Paul, and Tony are effectively in regular contact. And we'll kind of have day-to-day calls, day-to-day meetings where we have kind of risk or problem areas in contracts or things that need sorted that would typically permeate or escalate up to ourselves. If it's operationally kind of technically related, it'll tend to come back through Paul. If it's financially related, it'll tend to come back through Tony to myself. So we will operate a quarterly business review, which we will do in person, and we will spend the day kind of working through how did we perform last quarter, what's our targets for this quarter, and where and how are the general managers then brought into that in terms of the plan that they're going to operate to for that particular quarter. we'll then spend that month doing monthly meeting reviews in terms of tracking general managers against their performance. And then within that, on a weekly basis, I'll have a finance review meeting, and I'll have an operational review meeting with Paul and Tony respectively, so that we can kind of run through what's happening in terms of orders and contracts, both on the sales and order pipeline, what's in work in progress, and then what we're about to kind of transact or finish, and then how does that then find its way onto the kind of P&L and balance sheets.
Oh, that's very, and a quarterly review process. I mean, we advocate 90-day planning processes within businesses, because it's so important to have that short interval enough to make a change, but long enough to actually see that change takes place. So yeah. And did that come from your past history in the C-suite type management, or is that something
it has? Yeah, absolutely has. Yeah. So that C-suite world, in terms of the experience I kind of learned from being a senior executive. I basically have applied a number of those principles to how I operate my own business. Yeah.
So you're looking at these businesses, and you're thinking about purchase. How do you look at them for that opportunity? Is this the right fit? Is there opportunity to grow this business? Is it what sort of things do you think about when you're looking at a business?
I'm looking at P&L, so profit and loss accounts. I'm looking at the balance sheets. I'm looking at things like the asset register in terms of what assets they're holding. I'm looking at customer base in terms of what markets they're serving. I'm looking at the IM, so within the brokers will typically send you a top level kind of, here's what this business is about if you show some interest in that organization.
Yeah.
So I'm having a look at that organization, saying, okay, right, where is it based? How could that integrate into my current structure? What level of effort is required to integrate into my current level of structure? What's going on with the people within that organization? So is there a ready-made sort of management team, or someone to be able to take over into a GM role that we can promote up and actually kind of give them some sort of career progression? How do we recognize the team and reward the teams that are currently there? What processes are they applying? Do they have any asset kind of fixed assets, i.e., is it a warehouse, or kind of is there some sort of building that I can kind of take into the portfolio and take that onto my asset register myself? And actually that is probably a kind of key area for me in this space, because a lot of the lenders feel a lot more comfortable when you start bringing property or kind of fixed assets, etc., into this kind of market, because they're able to then use that as a leverage anchor around kind of risk of default.
Yeah.
So it helps a bit in terms of kind of that assessment criteria. So I'll go for a full due diligence assessment, and then I'm working out sort of what does a deal look like in terms of something that's a sensible offer that works for both myself and the current owner or owners. And typically, kind of market average will be around about 4 to 5% of EBIT as a number, and then we're looking at kind of what and how do we then kind of get that number through some sort of playbook structure. So and I have a structure that I'll use in order to do that, and well, the 3 times I've applied that playbook have been successful for me. So I'm kind of I've found some sort of formula that works, I think, from that side.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we've had a real sort of a masterclass of thinking about this. Do you also look at the business as its opportunity for growth, or is it just looking in terms of it fits within the group and enriches or enriches the de-risking the opportunity there?
Yeah, so there are 2 sides to that. There is the sort of kind of leap forward growth that you get as a result of kind of bringing the organization in. So you automatically start trading off the organization into your group. So you can kind of double or treble your business overnight kind of thing by bringing that organization in. But I won't do that at the expense of sort of compromising both myself or my team, either ethically or kind of from a process or a practice point of view, or indeed if that organization is too far away. So as an example, my businesses are all based down in the southwest of the UK. And that was done on purpose, so that we can kind of have a regional approach. But a lot of the contracts we will then let tend to be in the south or into London. So we're looking logistically at that type of thing when we're kind of dealing with those businesses, and I'm also looking at something that gives me a synergy. So where does it add value to what we might have a weakness in at the moment, or is this a new market that we might want to kind of move into?
Yeah. And you talked about, you were celebrating with one of your teams at the time that you were signing the deal of the third purchase. How do you involve the people? Yes, the trust with the business owner, existing business owner, is really important. You've made that clear. But how do you build that relationship then with the teams that are now, they've moved, they've now got a new owner, they've got new things happening. How do you build that and maintain that sort of passion within them?
Yeah, I mean, that first 12 to 18 months and probably the first 2 weeks are actually the most critical, because obviously there's a lot of kind of fear, anxiety of the unknown, and people kind of are worried about what does that mean for them in terms of their jobs. So is this person going to come in and kind of cut jobs? What are they going to do? And how's our livelihood going to be protected longer term? So for me, and this is why I kind of talk about my whole philosophy around this, is people first, future sustainability kind of follows on the back of that. So from my point of view, that first kind of couple of weeks is about getting around all of those individuals on a one-to-one basis and just providing assurances and trying to understand what they're worried about, how I can kind of provide some kind of assurance to them, how we then build trust ourselves. I often give out my phone number, my personal phone number, and just say, look, if you are worried, give me a call. And I would rather you phone me to talk about that worry than you left, because those individuals are central to that business trading going forward. And the biggest risk in any management buy-in is that kind of transition period, particularly the sort of first 2 to 6 weeks, where you've got individuals that aren't really clear about what their futures are.
Yeah.
And my job at that point is to make sure that they understand their future is within the business, which is why I want to, in terms of due diligence, promote up within the organization as quickly as possible to then actually kind of redraw people's roles, organization kind of boundaries, and then actually look at how we integrate those people into the kind of current reward mechanisms that we've got. So where we can kind of enhance holiday benefits, or we're doing things based on bits and pieces like that in terms of our due diligence, going, oh actually, buying this business might mean these people get an extra 5 days. So that's actually a positive benefit for me to be able to sell them day one.
Yeah.
Well, you do know we're going to change the T's and C's as a result of that. You're going to get 5 extra days off a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect little benefit to them, and also a nice sweetener to kind of say, well, we care and I care, and I'm going to look after you.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. That's a beautiful way of putting it. That those first few weeks are really important, and just saying that we care and we're here to look after you. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, Jason, wow, long conversation already, and some really insightful thoughts. So, let's meet up and have a coffee in about 5 years' time. We're going to look back at the next 5 years and reflect on it. What's been successful for you to make it both professionally and personally, to say that was another cracking 5 years?
I think for me, going around the organization and actually being able to kind of look people in the eye, and for them to turn back around to me and say, do you know what, this feels like a growing business, a sustainable business, and it fits with my values, and I feel part of this organization. So I do have a 10-year plan. That 10-year plan is to take this business to 100 million turnover, and we'll look to do that as part of our strategic intent to move into renewables and port infrastructure. So that's our next kind of journey now as the group. And in fact, yesterday I was speaking to that very point at the RWE Rampion 2 opportunity. So I went along to that and kind of talked about our journey into renewables. So I think from me personally, when I look at my family and my kids, I'm looking for my kids to then look at me and go, well, actually, do I want to work for myself, or do I want to go and work for a big business, and where will I actually get value? So I'd like to be able to kind of get them to start questioning whether or not the organization kind of typical route that people are sold of, finish school, go to university, get yourself into a big C-suite organization is the route for them, or actually they might be more inspired to kind of follow me through some of my journeys where I can help them kind of do something a bit different, and they can balance their own lives and learn from my mistakes.
Wow, that's what an awesome finish to that conversation, Jason. I mean, you know, you took those risks. Yeah, you did things that people said that you couldn't do. You really sort of bought into yourself. You bet big on the farm. You bet big on yourself, and brought other people with you. But just talking to you, you can hear the structure and the thinking behind why you do that. And that's what people are buying into. They're not going to buy into just visions. They need that understanding, that robustness of detail analysis, that robustness of what we're going to do, that robustness of taking things forwards and understanding these businesses you're going to buy, but also that beautiful thing that you talked about, which is the people are so important. Yeah, and bringing those people along with you. And you're not just buying a business, you're buying a set of people that are going to help the group become more successful of what you do. The structure that you've put in place based on your experience, you know, that 90-day plan and the quarterly reviews, having those regular management meetings to look at the numbers and see what's going on, understand the people, and doing that. And I just think that really beautiful thing that you said, that the first 2 weeks is the most important weeks when you take over a business. You've spent all that time, yeah, with your team planning and thinking, convincing the business owner that, you know, you're the right person to take over that legacy, for the business is going to support and grow. All that time, the people have maybe got an inkling of what's going on, maybe you've got worried about what's going on, etc. And that first 2 weeks is so important for you to be there to help them, even giving your personal phone number that they can phone you up, because actually they are what you're buying into, the structure and the legacy for that. And what I like really was that you also went and learned how to do this as well, and learned from mistakes and built that up. And that's really my sort of key takeaway is there's lots of this knowledge out there, but not many people like you actually have the strength of character to actually do it and have a go. And you said it takes lots of failures to make the things come right. So, Jason, thank you so much for that awesome conversation. There's so much in here for our audience to unpack and to think about buying their own businesses and moving forwards. We always finish with a quick fire round, if I may. So if you'd go back to your younger self, what advice would you give yourself?
Probably to become self-employed a lot earlier than I did, actually. Take a punt earlier. I mean, life is short. We're not here for long. I have regular conversations with myself anyway, actually. So I regularly consult my 80-year-old self and ask him what he would be proud of or not so proud of, and what mistakes should I be watching out for.
Oh, brilliant! I love that. That's fantastic. Any books you recommend?
Not so much books, but if I got a podcast, actually, I listen to Lewis Howes on a regular basis, who has some great. It's called Greatness, and he deals with entrepreneurship and sports psychology and people, and has some great guests on there as well. So he's the person I listen to when I'm out running.
Brilliant. Apps on your mobile phone, any that make a difference for you?
I think less apps actually makes a difference for me in this modern world. Actually, that it's all too easy to kind of get more and more apps, and in fact, I'm running the Marathon des Sables in November in Jordan.
Oh, fantastic!
And there was 5 apps I had to download for my coach in order to be able to then plug in all the data that he needs to be able to coach me properly for it. So I think less apps rather than more apps is probably a kind of suggestion. That a lot of this focus is about sacrifice and what you trade off. And I will watch my kids kind of spend far too much time on apps and not living in the real world. And I think a lot of this kind of stuff that we talk about is around where do you sacrifice? Where do you kind of really focus and laser focus into? Because this stuff is not easy.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, very, very much so. My favorite question of all, who's had the most influence on you as a business leader?
as a business leader, there's a multiple kind of people. I think the biggest lesson I took actually, not so much from the business world, but actually from a personal circumstances. My father died when I was 8. I actually think that was probably the most positive experience from a business world point of view that I've ever been given. And that might sound kind of backwards, but actually after having dealt with all of that emotional pain, the resilience that he gave me to be able to cope with difficulty and recognize life's short allowed me the freedom to then actually kind of try some of these things and bet on myself. So he's probably the biggest influence on me in terms of my business life. Lewis Howes again is another one. In fact, there are plenty of people on his podcast that I've listened to that I've thought are fantastic. Grant Cardone is also another interesting individual in terms of applying for attention and trying to get attention and being kind of not being afraid of who you actually are. And currently my coach, Mark Rhodes, who does the Hard to Kill program and is getting me ready for this race in the desert. Him and his psychotherapist team, etc., recognizing the importance of mental strength versus physical strength are also quite important to kind of, I suppose, achieving success in whatever you do, and recognizing it's not the result, it's the process that you go through to get the result, and enjoying that's probably more important than crossing the line.
Wow. What a fantastic answer. Thank you, Jason. Yeah, that was really stunning. And I love that thought about it's the mental toughness as well, not just the results. So thank you. And finally, how can people get hold of you?
So they can get hold of me through LinkedIn. So just type my name into LinkedIn or via any one of my businesses. So if you jump online, go to ecx.co.uk or cotswoldsteel.co.uk or baileyfabrications.uk. They'll be able to get hold of me through those routes.
Well, a fantastic conversation today. I've really enjoyed it. Had some real different approach to growing and developing a business and building a group as well. So thank you.
Thanks, Granger.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.